Well, Trippin was kind of born out of a bootleg, because I originally did a bootleg of Gold Tricks Trippin, and I was playing it a lot in my sets, and I gave it a couple of DJs that I know, and they were supporting it, and they were giving me some great feedback on it. So I had a word with a friend of mine, Rebecca, who's a fantastic singer, and I asked her if she wanted to do a vocal on it, if she wanted to re-sing it for me. And she did, and she just batted it out of the park. It was a really great vocal. So at that point, I kind of thought of it as more of a single than a bootleg. You know, that was about 4 years ago, and I've just been I've been tweaking it over the years, because I wanted to put out something that I was really happy with. And the reason it's taken a while is because I wanted to make sure that every single part of it was right, that I was doing the vocal justice, and that I was really happy with the final version. And that's kind of how it's ended up how it is at the moment. It's reflecting the new kind of Dirty Secretz sound. It's taking inspirations from old house music, and hopefully a bit from the original, the good bits from the original. And that's kind of how it's ended out today, and I'm really happy with the release. I'm glad that it's now out there and people will be able to play it and hope they like it. Well, the key elements of the track are mainly come out of samples, because I've always been very sample based. I produce in Ableton, and Ableton is a dream to work with. It's completely sample based, and it allows me to play around with sounds and really tweak them to get what I want. As far as like plugins that go, I mean, there's only a few plugins that are within the track, and they form the bass line, and that's straight out of Massive. Massive is a fantastic synth that I've got to know quite well, and I think it's not a case of how many synths you have or how many plugins you have. It's just about knowing certain ones really well, and I know Massive really well, and I always seem to get a really good sound out of it. So that's kind of one of the core bass kind of sounds come out of that. The stab sound, the kind of signature Trippin stab sound, that's come straight out of a one-shot stab that I've just tweaked around and EQ'd and messed around with. I can't even remember the steps that I did to get there, but that's just the evolution of the project. There's even a kind of plinky plonky kind of melodic sound that goes throughout, and that originally came from one of the early versions of the bootleg that I did, because I originally started the bootleg in Logic, Apple Logic, and there's a tiny synth in there called the Clothgeist, I think it's called, and it's meant to be a metronome, but what I did is I used it like an instrument and created a top line out of it. And as I say, that's one of the elements that kind of survived out of the early versions of the bootleg, and I brought that across into Ableton. It's one of the few things that I've replayed. And probably finally, the piano in it is what all producers will know as one of the core synths, and that's the Korg M1. It's an old school synthesizer, and the plugin replicates it perfectly. It's a complete go-to for anybody in a house that's trying to create those original organ sounds or piano sounds of the 90s, and it sounds good just almost straight off the bat. So I mean, Everything was a really big track for me, and it was kind of inspired by the big festivals and the clubs that I was playing at the time. But with Trippin, I've been developing my sound for a while, and it's kind of gone a bit slower and a bit kind of deeper, but I'm still trying to keep that same Dirty Secret kind of sound. It's just kind of it's moving from those kind of bigger environments down into the more intimate kind of clubs. And that's kind of where Trippin is, and that's kind of the kind of new Dirty Secret sound, slightly tweaked, but a kind of cooler, sexier kind of house sound.